Good morning, good day, good evening, or good night, wherever you are in the world. We have participants online from nearly every continent, and we are happy that you take your time to learn more about the theory of constraints. Please feel free to ask questions using the tool questions in the GoToWebinar control panel. At the end of the webinar, I'll ask Rami to give some answers to your questions. Just to remember, this webinar is part of a small series of webinars containing 3 webinars. The first one is today. The second one is today in 1 week, and the third one today in 2 weeks. And you can register every time until the webinar starts. So our topic for today is breaking inertia, outperforming your constraints. Rami Goldratt will use real-life examples from automotive, retail, and high schools, and he will explain why and how management attention must be focused on what is really holding us back. What is holding us back? That is the limitation that is dictating the ability to achieve more of our goals. And he has some recommendations, like set high objectives, which seems impossible to achieve given current constraints. Identify the conflict you must break with innovation to achieve the objective, and take it as your responsibility of being a leader to challenge inertia. So, who is talking to us? It's Rami Goldratt. He is CEO of Goldratt Consulting, headquartered in Israel, represented around the world. And he's recognized as a worldwide leader of theory of constraints. And Rami, I hope you are here and you will start with your presentation. I will give to you the ability to show your screen.
Thank you very much. So, can I share the screen now?
You should be able to share the screen.
Let me see. I'm trying to see where. Okay, now I got it.
Does it work?
Wait. Now, I don't see where screen. I can't see where I can share.
So if it not work, I can start the presentation and do it for you if you want.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll tell you whenever to switch.
So let's try again. Maybe it will work now. Yeah.
So can you see my screen?
Yeah, very good.
Okay. One second. Okay, so screen is on. I can start. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining our webinar. I would like to present to you in the next hour a very important concept that we use in the theory of constraints, which is called inertia and the need to break inertia. I will refer throughout this presentation to my father's work. Please understand that in the Jewish tradition, we're not allowed to call our parents by their names, and therefore, and not even their official titles. So the only way I can call my father is to say father, but I assume you know who I mean. So my father often said that every change, every improvement is a change. Of course, not every change is an improvement, but every improvement is a change. And if you want to get significant results, you need to do something fundamentally different. You cannot expect to do the same things and get the same result and get different results. And that's why he coined these 3 questions of change: what to change to, and how to cause the change. So he was fascinated with this concept of change. And one of the things that he talked about, which prevents us from making fundamental changes, is this force that he called inertia. What is inertia? Inertia is this force that brings us to continue and behave in the same way, in the same manner, even when there is a need to change. I remember once he told me it's actually inertia is even stronger. Inertia is this force that brings us to continue and behave in the same way, even when we know that we need to change, even when we know that we have problems, that they are not going to go away, and we nevertheless continue and behave in the same manner and expect that tomorrow things will be different and the problem will go away. And that's why it was very important for him to elaborate about what does it really need in order to break inertia, in order to do something fundamentally different. And that's what I want to show you today. We actually say that breaking inertia is one of the prime responsibilities of a leader. Why is it the responsibility of the leader? Because you actually expect most of the people in your organization to follow the book of rules, to follow the policies, not to do whatever they want, even if they think that they need to change, not just to change because they think they need to. There are these policies and their rules, and they made us the organization that we are, and we do not want to change it so quickly. So who is the person that needs to say, yes, we have this book of rules, but reality change, and we do need to do something different? It's the leader. Okay, every leader for his subset of systems that he's responsible for. He needs to say that, yeah, we have these threats or these problems, we need to change something. Breaking inertia is also the responsibility of the leader, not only when we have a crisis, but also when we're doing very well. Because maybe we're doing very well, but if we change something fundamental, we can do much better. Or maybe we're doing very well, but around the corner, there are these threats. And if we're not changing in time, when we face these threats, it will be too late. It's the leader's responsibility to break inertia. And throughout this presentation, I would like to highlight that in order to really break inertia, in order to really change something fundamental that can generate significant results, basically, we have to think how we can achieve performance that today seems impossible given our current limitations, given our current constraints. Because if we just try to optimize, to do better within the boundaries, within the limitations, we will not change anything fundamental. We will put ourselves in the same box and say how we can optimize, we can do a little bit better given the limitations. If you want to go outside the box, if you want to really make a jump in performance, it means you need to outperform your constraints, to change something fundamental. And I want to illustrate it in this presentation using 3 case studies. 3 case studies from very different environments. The first one will be from jewelry, retail. The second one will be from automotive, a company in Japan. And the third one will not be even from business environment, but from education environment, a high school in Israel. And all these 3 cases will illustrate what I've just said about breaking inertia and outperforming your constraints. I deliberately chose these case studies also because the changes they've implemented were not yesterday or a year ago, but more than 5-10 years ago, so we can really evaluate the sustainability of their solutions. And I also personally know the management that have created these changes, so I know it was not done by fluke. These changes were done out of strategic thinking, understanding the type of changes that they need to make, and having the courage to break inertia. But before we start with these 3 case studies, I want to first share with you a short story that my father shared with us a couple of years ago. Actually, he shared it with us 3 weeks before he passed away. So my father, in the month of June, sorry, my father passed away in June 2011, and in May, just a few weeks before, we have gathered 40 experts from around the world to come to his home and spend several hours every day for a few days to hear his latest developments and his latest teachings, because he was already very sick and he couldn't travel, but it was burning inside him to continue and disseminate the knowledge and the insights that he generated, applying TOC in the field. And I remember one of these stories that I want to share with you today, which actually, when he started this story, I was very surprised. He said that he wants to share with us a history lesson. He wants to teach us what have made ancient empires collapse, empires of the ancient world. And I was actually surprised, because I said, I cannot understand him. I mean, we have gathered these top experts and senior managers from different companies that apply TOC from around the world to come and to hear him. Who knows if there will be another opportunity? We all know that he's very sick. Why on earth he wants to teach us history? I mean, we came to learn about how to improve our organizations today. But later it became very, very clear. So allow me to share with you this story. It took him an hour to tell it. I will really make it concise and just summarize it like in 5-10 minutes. But I think it's worthwhile to listen to this story. This history lesson of what have made some of the ancient empires collapse. He started the story telling us about the Persian Empire. So the Persian Empire was a giant empire, okay? It actually ruled over 200 years on a vast territory. Until today, the Persian Empire holds the record of ruling over the highest percentage of the world's population. At the time, they have ruled over 46% of the population of the world. Massive empire. Hundreds of nations under their control. As you can see in this map, they ruled from north of India all the way to North Africa and the beginning of Europe. So vast empire. What have made this empire so strong, one of the reasons, is the strength of their army. And we know about this strength of army because for several times the Persian Empire have tried to conquer Greece, to enter into what is now today called Europe, but to conquer Greece. And the person that is considered the first historian, his name is Herodotus, that recorded history. He wrote about, several years later, he wrote about these attempts to invade Greece. And he told us about the size of the army. He said that when the Persian Empire tried to conquer Greece, they invaded with a force of 1.8 million soldiers. 1.8 million soldiers. If you look at Wikipedia about the strength of today's armies, you won't find such a big army. 1.8 soldiers, million. Massive army. One of the elite units of this army was a unit of cavaliers that rode on horses and have used a bow and arrow in order to shoot at the enemy with a bow and an arrow. Herodotus said that the Persian Empire had 24,000 such cavaliers. You see, one of the ways they controlled nations was the following. When they conquered a nation, they gave her two choices. They said, well, we can allow you to be subordinated to our empire, and you will even have freedom of religion. You can worship your own gods. However, when the time comes and we call you to join the army, you need to join our army and send your boys to fight for us. That's how they made their army so big. Of course, you also had the choice to say no and to die. Now, Herodotus said that this force of 24,000 cavaliers, when they shot their arrows, they used to shoot the arrows at the same time. because it's very difficult to aim when you're riding on a horse. So they used to all stretch the bow and to shoot the arrows at the same time towards the enemy. And because they had so many archers, when the Persian Empire shot their arrows, the sky became dark. You couldn't see the sun because of so many arrows in the air. Massive force. Who can beat such an army? No wonder that they became so strong. But there was one nation that they could never defeat, and they tried. And they tried several times to invade and defeat this nation, and they couldn't do that. And this nation is Greece. Why they couldn't defeat Greece? Greece was a much smaller nation. It's nothing to do with quantity. They couldn't defeat Greece because of the way the Greek fought there in battle. They had a very different battle technique. It's called the Phalanx, the Greek Phalanx. The Greek fought in a different way. First of all, the soldiers were quite heavily armed with a very long shield and thick armor. So it was difficult to hit them when you shot arrows at them. And they were standing very close to one another in a shape like a square, which is called the phalanx, very in rows and very close to one another. And actually every soldier held this big shield and protected the soldier next to him. And with a long spear, as you can see in this image, they, at the same time, they used to move their shields and to slice into the enemy that is charging at them. So if you are riding your horse or you are charging at them, as long as they maintain the discipline to keep the phalanx tight together, it was like jumping on a porcupine. So with such a battle technique, even though they were much smaller army, the Persian Empire could not defeat them. And they tried several times. The arrows didn't make damage, and the quantities, because the Greeks always chose the right, let's say, territory to fight, they couldn't defeat them. Now, why am I telling you this story? Because you may say, okay, if they tried several times and failed, every time, by the way, the Persians never changed their tactics. They just tried to invade with a bigger army. That's the only thing. And you may ask yourself, so why the Greeks always waited for the Persian to invade and they didn't, invaded the Persian Empire? And the reason is that the Greeks themselves were not united. They were actually divided to many small polis, which is like a city-state, if you wish, Athens and Sparta and Tibet, etc. So they were divided to small nations, and they united only when the big enemy Persia invaded. But the moment the Persians pulled back, the Greek small states dissolved and they fought actually one against the other. Until a certain time point where one of these Greek states, which was called Macedonia, have managed to beat all the other states and basically united Greece under the king of Macedonia named Philippus. And Philippus had a son, and this son, he inherited, basically united Greece under the ruling of Macedonia. And the name of this son, maybe you know, his name is Alexander the Great. And Alexander the Great, once he united Greece, he invaded the Persian Empire with a force of soldiers that was no more than 50,000 soldiers, 50,000, against armies of millions. And within a period of 5 to 8 years, he have wiped out the entire Persian Empire and have created what was known as the Greek Empire. Why am I telling you this story? The Persians tried again and again to invade Greece. They knew they have a problem. They knew they cannot defeat them. They tried, but they never changed the tactic until it was too late. Until with the same tactic, the Greeks just wiped out the Persian Empire. My father, they continued to share with us how the Greek Empire fell to the Roman Empire and so on, but here I will end my story because I want to go into the case studies of today's organizations. Nevertheless, the concept is the same. I'm talking about the power of inertia. Okay, continue and behave in the same way even when we know that there is a need to change, and we don't do that. The first case study, as I mentioned, is a company that is actually a jewelry retail from India, and their name is Titan Jewelry. They have a very famous brand called Tanishq. By the year 2009, Titan Jewelry reached a very good growth level. If I'll convert it to dollars, it will be $548 million. In India, rupee, they measure it in crore. 1 crore is 10 million units. So 2,764 10 million rupees. Okay, basically $550 million revenue. Sold through 174 outlets. Now, if you can see in this graph in front of you, they actually had a very good growth. And 2008 and 9 was not an easy year. We all remember, definitely not for jewelry. Nevertheless, they have achieved this fantastic growth. And then they understood that they must do something right. Probably they have a good brand. They were focused very much on the reliability of their gold, the fact that it's authentic, that it's genuine, that it's not mixed with other things. So, and they said, okay, we are doing something right. Look at our rate of growth, and that's despite of the crisis of 2008, 2009. And even though we're growing so nicely, we are still less than 5% of India market share. So there is massive room for growth. Encouraged by their performance and the ability to expand, they committed to the shareholders to continue with this growth. They've set an ambitious target to cross 10,000 crores. So if you remember, there were 2,700. So let's say to 3.5 times their current sales revenue within 5 years. Now, in retail, how do you achieve such growth? You do that by opening more stores, by expanding the portfolio of offerings, offering to more segments like bridal jewelry, fashion jewelry, pearls, diamonds. So to expand the portfolio of their products, to open more and more stores, that's how you grow in retail. And that's the plan that they submitted and got approval and got the finance in order to go ahead and do. So far, all very nice. But then they saw that they have quite a bit of a challenge, actually a significant challenge. Now they called McKinsey to come and look at their plan and to evaluate whether it's doable. And McKinsey said to them, look, based on our reports and analysis, we think it's definitely doable if we look at your market and the way you're operating. But there is one thing that you need to be careful of. They said, today you are around, you are around 3.5 inventory turns. Inventory turns, basically, for those of you who are not from this inventory, is from the time you have your inventory, how long it takes you to rotate it, to sell it. So if you have 1 inventory turn, it means it takes you a year to sell the inventory you have. If you have 2 inventory turns, it means it takes you 6 months to rotate, to sell the inventory you have. So they said today you have around 3.5 to 4 inventory turns. And you need to be very careful because looking at your growth plan, your inventory turns are likely to go below 2 turns. So below 2 turns basically means that you're going to hold 6 months and more worth of inventory. Looking at their target, it means holding more than $750 million worth of inventory. This could be a major risk for the business. You see, they realize that the rapid expansion will reduce inventory turns to below 2 turns, risking the stability of the business. Right? Whenever you're opening more stores, a new store, you need to put inventory there, and it will take you time until you start to sell it. And when you go to new segments and new portfolios, at the same time, so you always, when you increase range, you will always reduce your inventory turn. You'll have more slow-moving products. By the way, we will talk about it in the webinar that we will do next week, bringing forecast closer to reality. Going back to this story, they said, okay, we cannot take this risk. We cannot operate with such high inventory turns because then if for any reason sales slows down, we can bring the company to its knees. We cannot finance it. Now, this brought a huge challenge for them. Why? Because they already committed to the board. Let me first read this conflict to you. Okay, so if you want to achieve successful growth, we want to keep the aggressive expansion, what we have committed. This means we need to operate with higher inventory turns. At the same time, we need to reduce risk to protect the stability of the business, but this means limiting our inventories. If we limit the inventories, we will not be able to open as many stores as we want and to increase the portfolio as much as we want, and therefore we will not meet the targets. That's a significant conflict. Now, in normal times, as managers, we are all managers, we face conflicts all the time. Actually, it's our job to deal with the conflicts that we face in our organizations and to solve them. And in normal times, what we can do when we face such a tough conflict, we optimize. We look at it, and for example here, and we say, okay, what will be the reasonable inventories that we can accommodate that will give us good enough growth, and at the same time will not place us under such a high risk. We try to optimize the inventory level, given our constraint, our cash. But when you're facing a tough challenge, like in this case, they already committed to the board. They cannot come and say, after the board and the shareholders place money, they cannot come and say, you know what, sorry, we're going back from our plan. That's going to have severe consequences. When we face such a challenge, a crisis, if you wish, you can no longer optimize. You can no longer take the constraint, cash in this case, as given and say, okay, what is the best I can do given my constraint, my limitation? That's not an option anymore. You are forced to think, can I do something? Can I change something fundamentally in the way I operate that will achieve the level of performance despite the constraint that I have? Before we show you what they have done, let me explain a little bit further about their environment so you can understand the revolution of their solution. Because from people outside the jewelry business, when they see the solution, it seems a bit trivial, but not for the jewelry business. So let me share a little bit about their environment. I'm reading what you see here on the slide. Some fast movers are not available in store for 15 to 20 weeks a year. How could it be? Because jewelry is a very slow turn industry. Okay, it takes you time to rotate the inventory, to sell the inventory you have. Actually, if you are able to sell a diamond necklace within 3 months since it entered the store, this is considered a fast mover. 1 unit in 3 months is a fast mover. Okay, so it's quite a slow turn industry, a lot of slow moving products. Now, in such a high capital industry that the inventory costs you a lot of money, you don't keep stock in warehouse. Whatever stock you have, merchandise you have, you put in the stores. Now, if a store sells a unit within 3 months, let's say, and it's a fast mover, and you don't have a stock in the warehouse to replace, then what the store will do, it will place an order to the plant. They are vertically integrated, by the way, so they have their own plants. Now, even if you've ordered exactly the same unit that you've sold, this fast mover, it goes to the plant and it will receive the priority in the plant according to the time that you place the order. It's not going to get a higher priority, right? And then you have the production lead time and the transportation time, etc., until it will come back to the store. Time goes by, 15 to 20 weeks. Now, more than that, in many cases, a store that even when I sold this necklace 1 in 3 months, I'm not going to necessarily order the same necklace, even if I sold it fast. Because who said that I will sell it again? It's such a slow turn industry. If I'm able to sell, if I already sold something and I have the budget to buy something else, I will buy something new that I did not have before. So I can always renew my stock. So many fast movers were never replenished. That's how you had amazing stockouts of what is seen to be fast movers in their industry. Much of the product universe do not develop significant sales level. 90% of the products contribute 35% of sales, not more than that, because they are never being replenished. Always, if I sell something, I'll order something new, not the same thing. And there is a big tail by nature. Tail is the slow-moving products. So about 20% of their stock in a store is more than 6 months old, and 12 and 15% is more than a year old in the store. A lot of slow-moving products. Now that's why the conflict is so intense. Now I know that whenever I open more stores and expand the portfolio, inventory turns will take a nosedive. What did they do? I will read to you now a paragraph from the statement that they have published to the shareholders. I've downloaded it from online. You can do it the same. The statement that they released to the shareholders back then in 2010-11, and let's see what they said. There are many initiatives in the pipeline to make our stocks work for us much better. Key among them being: 1. Populating all stores with many more bestsellers than at present. Establish a made-to-replenishment pipeline to deal with sellout on a daily basis. Basically, they've defined criteria that will determine what is a fast mover. Then, the top fast movers, the one that can generate a lot of sales, they take a courageous decision to hold these products in a warehouse, to build buffer stock in a warehouse, which is unheard of in jewelry. And then whenever such a fast mover is sold from the store, it will be immediately replenished from the warehouse, from stock. This is how it gets one day and it's there. And if you have fast movers that are not the superstars but are still fast movers, you will not hold it in stock, but you will place an order for the same product SKU to the plant. You're not going to be able to order something else because this is a fast mover. They reduce the freedom of the store to order whatever they want. It will go to the plant and it will get the top priority, even though the order just came. Because it's a fast mover, it jumps the queue, so it takes you just the touch time in order to replenish it, and therefore it will come very fast to the store. If you understand, the bigger the ratio of fast-moving products from their portfolio, the more you can grow without reducing your inventory turns. Because if you have more proportion of fast-moving inventory, you can rotate the inventory faster. Dealing with slow-moving, the tail of the inventory in a more systematic way. I'll tell you the norm in this industry. You have inventory in the store that is aged, that you cannot sell, that it's more than 6 months, more than 12 months. Do you know where it is? You put it in a drawer, at the bottom drawer. What can you do with it? Only if some customer come and ask something specific, you'll pull it out, but it's gonna lie there and accumulate dust, as we say. They said, okay, that's how we are dealing with it today, but what should we do instead? Instead, let's first do statistical analysis, because they have so many stores spread across India. So let's do analysis to see to what extent a tail product, a slow-moving product in one store, will be a slow-moving product everywhere. And they found something very surprising. They found that actually 30% of tail products, 30% of slow-moving items in one store could be fast-moving items in other stores. And only 15%, only 15% of the tail products in a particular store will be what we call absolute tail. No matter where you put them, it will be slow-moving. Now, if that's the case, so whenever we identify something as an absolute tail, let's just take it back and melt it and put something else instead. It doesn't help us that it's in the store, just accumulating dust. And all the rest of the tail products, why to wait? Let's define a certain period that will let it be in the store until we know it's a tail. And then we'll start rotating the tail products across the stores, because in one store it can be a tail, in a different one it could be a fast mover. Let's go to each store and tell them basically, you know what, give me your bottom drawer. You want new inventory, right? Fresh products that you have never presented before. I'll give it to you. Give me your bottom drawer that is more than a year old, and I will give you a different, for the same draw, I'll give you a different draw, okay? Which is basically the tail of another product, other stores, but maybe you will be able to sell it. And I'm not gonna talk about it like that, but I'm starting to rotate this merchandise across the stores and starting to increase the sellability of these items. Number 3, introducing new products in a more systematic way. They used to introduce, listen carefully, 10,000 new products every year. 10,000 on the catalog that stores can order from. Now, if you introduce so many new products, again, you will have negative impact on your inventory turns, because you're not going to allow any product to reveal if it can be a fast mover, if it can sell in large quantities in many stores, because every store will order something else. So we said, no, let's limit the number of new products, still give enough choices, and we cut it to half. It's good enough. Who needs 10,000? 5,000, and then start to put it, as we call, on a pilot period in a store to see if it's selling or not, and only if it's selling, we expand it to more stores. It's all about flow. Now, it may sound to you quite trivial if you're in fast-moving consumer goods or something of the like, but in jewelry, this was a revolution. To hold stock, not to give freedom to order whatever you want, to try and increase the ratio of fast mover from your portfolio, to be much more systematic about slow-moving products, not to accumulate dust, and all of that was revolution. And it generated quite nice results. What you see here, the blue line is their sales, their turnover. You can see that they have crossed their target in the year 16-17. And the numbers you see here, these are the inventory turns, okay? The warning was to go below 2. They never even came close to that. Only in 2016, the bottom was 2.5. That was because you can see also the revenue dropped. It was because of some government policy that have hurt the sales of gold in India at that period, but you can see they picked it up very quickly afterwards. Now they have set a different target. They've set to a target of 50,000 crores, five-folding their sales, or actually 4 times their sales, by the year 2023. Again, forcing them to do something different in order to sustain such growth or achieve such growth. So this was the first case study. I hope you liked it. Let me go to the next case study. And the next case study is taken from a different industry, automotive. It's a case study of Mazda. Mazda Motor Corporation is a $23 billion automotive company, 40,000 employees, selling almost 1.5 million cars a year. Not one of the big, but one of the known brands, automotive brands in the world. In the year 2012, Mazda faced a crisis. They were already after 4 consecutive years in the red, making losses. And in addition to that, the government placed a much tightened fuel efficiency requirement that they had to deal with. They were not one of the known to be fuel efficient automotives, because Mazda is promoting what they call the spirit of zoom zoom, which is more like sporty feeling and features of a car for the family car. And well, zoom zoom and sporty features doesn't go a long way with the fuel efficiency. So now they had to deal with this fuel efficiency requirement. The hybrid electric vehicle market increased dramatically in these periods due to economical vehicle tax deductions, and they had no presence in hybrid electric vehicle, nothing. They didn't have any of this. In addition to that, because of those years of making losses, Ford, which had a joint venture with them, pulled out and decided not to help them finance anymore, and therefore they lost all their credibility in terms of backup of financial support. And on top of these, during 2012 there was a big earthquake and hyper yen appreciation in Japan. You need to understand that Mazda is producing, and all of their suppliers are producing in Hiroshima. So it's manufacturing bases in Japan. So when yen appreciate, or when you have these catastrophes, natural catastrophes, this doesn't help at all their operations. Now they faced a big challenge. Okay, Mazda and its suppliers are producing in Hiroshima. They're responsible for this community. To close the gaps, all the gaps we talked about, a lot of money is needed. And if 2013, another year, they will make losses, that's it. There's no way to finance anymore the business. A big challenge. You see, if you want to have a healthy business, you have to increase sales in the future, you have to grow. This means that they need to invest in the development to close all the gaps. But at the same time, in order to have a healthy business, they need to protect cash and profit. They have to maintain the stability of their business. In their case, not only that they cannot invest, they have to focus on cost reduction, dramatic cost reduction. Now, again, in normal times as managers, we face such conflicts all the time. And when the conflict is severe, what we do is we optimize. We say, okay, let's see what the best we can. Let's see which gaps I have to close and what will be the investment that is required to close these gaps. And where can I cut costs as much as I can to give me some breathing space. And we find the optimization point and we manage it. But when we face a crisis, we cannot optimize anymore. We cannot take our constraint as given and ask, what is the best I can do? It's no longer the case. I have to think, how can I break this conflict, or how can I achieve a level of performance, the needed level of performance, despite my constraint, outperforming my constraint. Now, to cut a long story short, I'll tell you what they've done. It doesn't really matter the technicalities of the solution, because I want to drive the point of breaking inertia means outperforming your constraints. Thinking how to achieve level of performance that today seems impossible. And because it seems impossible, that's where you need to think of if you want to really break inertia. So Mazda decided to focus all their development on a new engine, an engine that they call Skyactiv. This engine, which focuses on basically energy loss reduction, I will call it, enabled them to maintain the internal combustion engine vehicles, which they were, that was their technology, but to achieve much better fuel efficiency. Okay, just as good as a hybrid engine of that time. And no compromise on the driving pleasure, because it's still internal combustion engine. And the technology was cheap. It will be affordable for all the customers. And because it relies on their current technology, and because they also use critical chain project management technique, they were able to cut the product development time to half. The record in the industry was 2 years to develop a new engine, and they managed to do it within 1 year. And they got great awards for that. So CX-5 was the most sold car in Japan in 2012. I just chose 2 examples, but all over the world it was a great success. I'm going to skip these slides for the lack of time. These slides were taken from a presentation Mazda has done in TUC-ICO in 2013, talking about the road to breakthrough. Okay, you can watch this presentation they have done in their TUC-ICO website. Okay, so how they focused on energy loss reduction in order to generate this engine, and how they use critical chain in order to speed up the development time. I'm going to skip it now. Basically, look at the results, right? Another year in the red, and they're losing the business, and within a year they went into profits and sustained it. And how you see the trend is going down, they have to do something different. They have to break inertia again before it will be too late. Okay, but what they are doing, I cannot reveal at this time. This was the second case study. Now I want to complete my presentation with another case study, this time a high school from education field, a high school in Israel. The name of the high school is Ulpanat Reut. It's a high school in Israel that serves a very low socioeconomic community with lots of immigrants. So it's quite challenging education environment in terms of the ability to reach good scores. Now, in Israel, all high schools are measured. The prime measurement of all high schools is the percent of students that finish high school with a diploma, high school diploma. And in order to get a high school diploma, you need to pass the matriculation exams. So these are exams in different subjects, and every subject different levels, and you need to accumulate enough points in order to get a high school diploma. Now, this high school had a perfect record. For the last 10 years, not even a single student got a diploma, 0%. Not exactly good situation to be, especially because the district where this high school belongs to, all the districts in Israel are also measured by the percentage of students in the districts that finish with a diploma. And as you can imagine, the performance of this high school didn't help the average score of the district. So the district came with a brilliant solution to improve their score of percentage of students. And the solution for the district was, let's close down this high school. If we close it down and a lot of the students will go maybe to other districts, then we will obviously improve our average score. And they gave the high school 3 years because there were still students there that they need to finish their high school. So they said, look, you need to understand, in 3 years, we're closing you down. Now, I have to say that, and I work personally with this high school, it was amazing to see how motivated and inspiring the teachers and the administration staff of this high school was, because they didn't let go. They didn't want to give up on these students. They knew what will happen if the high school is closed and they're just going to go to other places. They knew the alternatives are even worse. They said, no, we have to do something different. But there was a big challenge, because there's no option to get better students, and actually we don't want better students. We want to succeed with these students. And replacing teachers, it's not the teacher's fault. I remember the teachers coming and telling us, look, when the student comes to the high school, which is 10th grade, the level is like 6th grade. So I don't have the time even to bring him to the level of normal students that enter high schools, not to talk about passing matriculation exams. And we don't have the time now, and who said that it can work, to change the way that teachers are teaching. Maybe they can teach math in a better way or English in a better way. And they tried all the new techniques, and it didn't work. What is the conflict that we have to break? If we want to provide good education, we need to fulfill the potential of every student. This is like our oath as teachers. Now, if we want to fulfill the potential of every student, this means that I need to teach at the individual level, because students have different levels. Every student has his own needs, specific needs and talents and requirements. So I need to teach at the individual level if I want to fulfill your potential. The problem is that I don't have a teacher for every student. I have a teacher in front of 40 students in a classroom. So if I want to promote as many students as possible, I cannot teach at one of their individual levels. I have to teach at the average level. It's a common denominator. Now, in normal high schools, or every education field face this conflict, and we optimize. So we say, okay, let's teach at the average level in the classroom, but then give some extra hours to the strong ones and to the weak ones, or ask the parents to teach them at home, and we'll find some optimization. And that's what they have done all the time. And because the students were such low level when they came to the high school, nobody passed the matriculation exam. But now, under the threat of schools closure, they have to do something completely different. They really need to think, how can we achieve a level of performance that seems impossible given our limitations today? Can we, instead of hurting the average score of the district, actually contribute to the average score of the districts? In other words, bringing the average up? Is it possible? Without changing the students, without changing the teachers, without changing the teaching techniques. We don't have the time. Now I'll tell you what they have done. I assume most of us are not experts in education, and I'm not claiming that it will work in every education field. I'm just telling you their story, that's all, in order to highlight the point of breaking inertia. So I'll tell you what they've done, and again, we're not going to go into all the technicalities, etc. The main thing I would like you to understand is that it was a revolution. So the first thing they've done, they said the following. Today, we are treating everyone the same, and because of that, nobody passed the matriculation exam. So let's stop with that, and let's understand, and let's change the objective. To you guys, I can say what I couldn't say to them or to any other education professional. Actually, we said no more, the objective is no more to make sure every student passed the exam. Because if our objective is that every student will pass the exam, nobody passed the exam. That's what we have tried 10 years or more. We are going to do the following. Let's split the students to 3 buckets. The ones that are missing only 1 or 2 subjects to pass the exam, because the exams are taken in every subject. Okay, you have an exam in English, exam in literature, exam in history. Okay, in every exam, every subject you have different levels, and that's how you accumulate the points, different exams. So they said some students need to pass only 1 or 2 subjects, exams in 2 subjects, and they get a diploma. This is bucket 1. Bucket 2 are students that they need only 3 to 5 subjects to pass the exam. And bucket 3 are students who need 6 and more subjects to pass the exam, to get the diploma, sorry. Now, what we need and our objective is to move students from one bucket to another. That's it. So those who are missing 1 and 2 exams to get a diploma, my objective is to move them out so they finish high school with a diploma. Those who are missing 3 to 5, my objective is that they will end high school missing only 1 or 2, because you can take the exams also after high school, no problem with that. And if you can take your exam only on 1 or 2 subjects, it's much easier for you to complete the exams and get a diploma. My objective is just to move students from one bucket to another, and now I will gear all my teaching resources for me to be able to make sure that we move them from one bucket to one bucket. My friends, this change alone will enable us within a year to reach 30% entitlement for a diploma. 30%, 30. I mean, the teachers were amazed of such a result. Never in their life they had it. Unfortunately, the district said, well, this is very nice, and we have no idea how you have pulled it through, but it still means that you are pulling our average down. It's still not sufficient, and therefore we're still going to stick to the plan and close you. So well done, great job, but not enough. And then we had to do another change, which I'll tell you now. We said the following, and this is taken from a critical chain project management, basically. What did we say? In those of you who are familiar with critical chain, you know that the #1 enemy for productivity is what we call bad multitasking. This means that you are trying to work on too many tasks in parallel, and because you're switching from one task to another all the time, you never complete any of the tasks. Okay, so each task will take you much longer to complete, and you need to do a lot of rework whenever you're jumping back and forth, etc. So we've applied the same principle, but for this field. In Israel, at least, you don't have to take the exam in all subjects at the end of the 12th grade. You can take some exams in 10th grade and some exams in 11th grade and some exams in 12th grade. You can decide which subject to teach and which subject to send your students to do the exam in every year. And we said, instead of trying to teach everything from the first year, because there are so many gaps, the early we start, the early we finish, instead of this mentality, let's limit the number of subjects that we will teach every year and do it in a way that the moment let's, for example, I will teach them literature in the 10th grade and make sure they pass the exam on the 10th grade and get it over with. And then we focus the attention on few subjects every year and take the exam on that during that year. And more than that, the second thing we have done, we said, today, we are forced to plan the curriculum for the entire year upfront. What does it mean? It means that upfront, I need to determine for each student how many hours I'm going to teach him English and literature and Bible and math and science. Like I have a crystal ball that will tell me exactly how many hours every student needs in every subject. Now, of course, I know there is a lot of uncertainty, so I will, when I do the plan, I will say, okay, maybe this student will need less hours because he's good in math, but nevertheless, he's part of a group, so he will get all these hours. But some students are good in math, but not so good in English, and that some students are the opposite. Who said that they need, everybody needs the same hours, and that I know how many hours every student needs up front? It's like trying to create a project plan, thinking that you know exactly what will be the duration of every task. It's ridiculous. So we said, instead of putting the buffers in the tasks, instead of planning the whole curriculum up front, let's do it differently. In Israel, you can take the exam every year in the winter or in the summer. And we said, let's plan the curriculum not for the whole year, but on the limited subject we teach every year, we'll plan the curriculum only for half a year. Put a lot of effort during this half a year and have them pass go to take the exam in the winter. Then some will fail in math but succeed in English. Some will fail in English but succeed in math. Perfect. I have no problem. Some will fail because now I have half a year, the remaining half a year, to take all those, for example, who failed in English and teach them only English. So in the summer, they'll pass English. I'll use the buffer when I need it and with whom I need it, and not with everybody. Why to waste it? And at the same time, those who pass math, those who passed English but fail math, I have half a year to teach only math. Now, this was very courageous and revolution because it meant for the education ministry, we still had to give the curriculum for the whole year because that's how they put their budget. They need the whole curriculum, and that's what they've done. But all the teachers agreed eternally, there is the curriculum we sent to the education ministry, but inside we will teach according to a very different curriculum. Only for half a year, and then we regroup the students based on the exam that they still need to pass to do it in the summer. And look at the results. After the third year, second year onwards, actually, they have reached 70% entitlement. My friends, the average in the country at that time was 50%, and they were 70%. So they pulled the average up without changing the students or the teachers or the way they teach, just reorganizing the way we allocate hours and what we teach, when we teach, to whom we teach it. And look at the type of results you can achieve by doing something very, very different. I would like to finish my webinar with 2 key lessons and a recommendation. The first lesson is what I repeatedly said again and again. To achieve a breakthrough innovation, we must challenge our constraints. We cannot say what is the best I can do given my limitation. Maybe you can do much more given your limitation, but that's not going to be the breakthrough innovation you're looking for. This will not break inertia. This is optimization. If you want to break inertia, you have to think, how do you achieve levels that seems impossible today given your constraint? This will really force you to think if you can do something very, very different and achieve, therefore, these significant results. Lesson number 2 is not less important. There was something common to all the cases I talked about. And what was common is that they had to wait for a crisis to push them to do something different. Either because they already gave a commitment to the board, to the shareholders who put money in the business, or because they were going to close the business down, or because one more year of losses and you are end with the company. You have to wait for a crisis to do this fundamental change, to force you to break inertia. Now, obviously, I don't need to explain to you why a crisis pushes you to think differently. And I think this year, a lot of us had to face a crisis that forced us to think differently. But why wait? Why wait? I mean, I gave you 3 successful case studies, but for every case study, there are dozens of success. There are dozens of failures. It's very difficult to change something fundamental under a crisis. It's very difficult to change something fundamental without a crisis, so let alone during a crisis. Why wait? And now comes my recommendation, and with that, we'll finish our webinar this week. Not to wait means what? Here's my recommendation, which you can start thinking about from tomorrow. First, don't wait for a crisis. Set a high objective, which seems impossible to achieve given our current constraint. You don't need to put the highest objective. I'm not asking you that, but just high enough so you intuitively feel, look, no way I can do it the way we are working today. Something will limit us. That's good, not bad. Then identify the conflict that you have to break with innovation, doing something very different in order to achieve this objective. I gave you examples of conflicts here. And take it as your responsibility as a leader before the crisis comes to think, can I break inertia? Can I challenge inertia to achieve these type of results before the crisis comes? I hope this was interesting for you, and I look forward to interact with you again next week in our webinar about bringing forecast closer to reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rami. Great presentation. Thank you. There are some questions, and I tried to condense them into, let's say, 4 topics. I've prepared that, and we'll show them on the screen. For that, I have to change the presenter. So here is the first one. If it is so difficult for nearly everyone in the world to change behavior, to change tactics, even if they know that the current tactics are wrong, what is the magic key in TOC to change that? Not only for some experts, but let's say for everybody.
I think that's a very good question. So in order to break inertia, remember how I started the presentation? I said every improvement is a change, but not every change is an improvement. So you need to know how to answer prudently, I would say, 3 questions. What to change? So what really I can change or I should change in order to achieve such level of results that will inspire everybody and motivate everybody to do? And how to make sure that I'm not just chasing symptoms, but dealing with the core challenge. There are tools in TOC that enables you to do it. I won't say TOC is the only method or tool that will enable. I'm not preaching that you have to do TOC, otherwise the world is over. Don't take me in such a way. I'm just saying to you, and that's why I tried not to talk so much on TOC here, but to talk about breaking inertia and the concept. But I do know that one of the reasons why we fail addressing the right problem is because we're trying to chase and put off all the fires and all the symptoms. Instead of doing that, we need to, if you focus the attention on one thing that you know, if you break it, if you solve it, you'll make a jump in performance. If you focus on it, you will find that you can come up with solutions. For example, in the presentation I skip of Mazda, they said that when they looked at the type of projects that they had in order to improve their fuel efficiency, because that was one of the problems they had, they said they found something interesting. They had the number of initiatives to improve fuel efficiency was equal to the number of engineers that they had. So every engineer has his own initiative. And said, no, okay, that's not going to work like that. And they settled down and focused on this one engine. Okay, that's what we're going to do. And all of the engineers worked together on how to do it. Okay, now how to get the consensus on what to change and focus. There are ways to do it. There are tools in TOC that can help you to do it, but not necessarily TOC. Even when you know where to focus, you need to think of what to change to. Okay, how do I solve this set of problems without creating a new set of problems? And of course, how to cause the change, which is, I mean, so many times we had great solutions to tough problems and we fail in the execution because we're introducing them in a way that create resistance rather than armor. So again, how to do it, etc., is not the subject for this webinar. It will take time, but TOC definitely have tools to help you do that. I hope I answered the question. I
hope so too. Maybe the next question is related to the first one and maybe a little bit philosophical. This is why I love measurements. You find very good actions with a twinkle, a nightmare. How to convince the managers or politicians who decide about the measurements? This question came in when you talked about that there were the goal to of the school, the goal of the school, and that it doesn't work, the measurement.
Yeah. Measurement, of course, is a whole subject on its own merit, and as you said, it's a bit philosophical. But I'll just say a few words about it, because otherwise it can be a whole long story. What we normally do in TOC when we talk about improvements and significant improvements like what we're talking here, we start with the goal. Okay, what is the goal that you want to achieve? The objective, if you wish. And whenever you design the goal or define the goal, one of the key, I will say, guidelines in TOC is to make sure that your goal is defined in a way that you can, not only that it's clear, but you can measure whether or not you're making headways towards this goal. And many times, now I'm not talking about measures accurately, because there's no such thing as accurate measures. I cannot say that we educate a student 8.7. Okay, that's nonsense. Okay, but I need at least to be able to measure what it means achieving more of this goal or achieving less. I'll give you an example, because sometimes it's counterintuitive. What makes us define goals that are not measured is because actually coming from good intentions. We want to inspire ourselves when we set objectives, but when we write them in high words, which are very inspiring, the same thing also makes us wonder, okay, what does it mean and how to measure it? For example, we work with the state of Utah in the US in the area of welfare, one of the areas we work there. And in one of the agencies that work in the government, they're responsible to take care of, how do you call it, disabled people, okay? And their goal was, we would like to empower disabled people. Now, I think when we hear it, we say, wow, that's an amazing goal. That's so inspiring. It's great. But what does it mean to empower disabled? What does it mean? What does it mean to the people in the field tomorrow morning? And how do we measure if we do it or not? So a lot of work was done just to define it. And eventually said, okay, what is the challenge we're trying to solve? The fact that a lot of disabled people, they don't have a job. And if they don't have a job, then starts a vicious cycle that pulls them to become less and less responsible, productive, happy, whatever you want to phrase it. And we think that if we are able to provide them with a decent job, not to work in McDonald's, but with a decent job, then we are able to turn the vicious cycle into a virtuous cycle. Okay, so they start to build their self-esteem, they start to be self-dependent, etc. Great, so now let's define the goal. The goal of empowering disabled people basically means that we want to provide or enable disabled people to have a decent job. Now I can start to break it down to measurements. How many of them get a job, and which job, and what will be the income, and how many of them sustain it, etc., etc. It becomes measurable. Okay. I think that I can go on and on, but
Okay, but
another time.
like magic, the next question seems to be connected to that. The question is, does this mean if you try 10 years to reach an objective, but you didn't reach it, the solution is to cancel the objective to find another objective? Or does this mean that a good-looking objective can be a limitation?
Look, let me first say that I'm trying, in Israel, we're not very very polite. Politically correctness is not one of our virtues. So let me just say, sometimes the objectives are set for you. Okay, so high schools are measured based on percentage of matriculation exam. Now you can say, I don't believe it's a good measurement, and I don't think that a student that finished high school with an exam is better or more educated than another. You can be like that, and it's okay, but you're still measured by this. And remember the story, they closed them down, or they told them that they will be closed. Of course, they didn't close it at the end. So sometimes it's just set for you. So you don't have a choice. You cannot decide if I want to change. Maybe I'll change. I don't want my business to be profitable. And sometimes it's not your choice. Okay, first of all. Now, even if it's your choice, I mean, the real thing for me, if I look at an objective, if it's good or not, I use 3 criteria to evaluate. None of them is whether or not you can do it tomorrow, because that's your job, right? We want to break inertia means I do want to think how we can achieve it differently. To really sit down and focus. So my criteria to evaluate objective is 3, and I'll say it quickly, and because again we don't want to go into it. The first one is I want to make sure that the objective is not inward looking, it's outward looking. What does it mean? It means I want to make sure that the objective, I don't like objective that says I want to be the #1 company in the world. I hate this objective. Or I want to reach a profit level of so and so. Okay, that's maybe a measurement, but not an objective. Objective has to be outward looking, and really what it means that you need to define who are your customers and what is the value that you want to bring to these customers, and that should be your objective. If you want to be to be a winner. Okay, I want to ensure so and so disabled people have a decent job. Okay, I need to think of the value to my customers as the objective. Now, the second criteria is that the objective has to be clear and measurable. I think I talked about it in the previous section answer. And the third criteria, and that's maybe going a little bit to what is said in this question, is I want to make sure that you define an objective that you have direct impact. In other words, the chain of causality between what you are responsible for and the objective is not too long. Because if it's too long, then you stop talking about achieving it and you start talking about influencing it. So I don't know if I can bring the students to pass the exam, but I can influence, I can teach them better so they're ready to pass the exam in the future. The moment you have an objective that you're just talking about influencing because the causality is too long and there could be too many external factors that will prevent you from achieving it, then you start dismissing your responsibility. You become like a victim. And therefore, then I will say choose another objective. Okay? So again, choose an objective where the value to the customer is clear, it's outward looking, depending who is the customer, right? But second, that it's clear and measurable. And third, that you have direct impact on this objective. If you don't meet these criteria, then I would advise change an objective.
Yeah. Okay, great. And there's a last question I've chosen from all the questions, and this is Eli Goldratt. Your father often asked us, or he asked people, why didn't you learn from crisis? Can you elaborate on that?
He said it because, as we just understood from these examples, crises force you to behave differently. And many times when you did this change, when the crisis was over, you went back to old habits. You stopped behaving differently and you went back to the old habits, and therefore you lost the opportunity the crisis presented to you to learn how to break inertia. Now, I'm not saying that whatever you're doing under a crisis, you should continue doing. Of course, part of the process is to think, how do I make the changes and how do I do it in a way that makes sense to continue after the crisis as well, in this way. Okay?
Okay, thank you. So we have 2 more webinars. This is the first one is bringing forecast closer to reality. This is on the 1st of July. And very mystery title, the Seductive 7. This is on the 8th of July, both at the same time as today. Thank you again, Rami, for this hour with us all. Thank you, all participants that you have been here. I'm looking forward to see you again next week, and have a good time and stay healthy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.